I will call to order the city council meeting for December 16th, 2024. City clerk, if you could please do roll call.
Member Karen. Okay. Member Gates.
Here.
Member Traver.
Here.
Member Underhill. Erzberger.
Here.
We have a quorum, Your Honor.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to excuse Councilmember Underhill and Cheney Huggett?
So moved. Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same signs for no. Motion passes. And invocation tonight, I believe we have Bill Cole here. Come on up, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Let's pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for the Republic, to be able to live in the United States of America. We thank you for all of its governments and leaders and its finest expression right there with the people, local government, city government. We thank you for Marshall. It is a fine place to live, and it's a place that is that because of leaders also and involved citizens. Lord, we thank you for the year that has passed. It was quite the year, quite the challenge. And with it, Lord, I thank you for our council that faced it with grace and give them all grace and wisdom beyond their years and experience. Give them wisdom, Lord, for whatever is short of the perfect. We would do what is best, and they must do what is best. And so give them even this day wisdom to listen to each other, to listen to their constituents, but then to do what they believe is right. So with that, Lord, we're praying for the burden that's on them and the blessings on them and blessings on our city, blessings on its first responders, its schools, its churches, all of its organizations, all of its businesses, every one of its citizens. Bless them and bless them also through this council meeting, what is decided tonight. We pray it in your name. Amen.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Bill. Brings us to approval of agenda. Six, we have public comment on agenda items. 7 is consent agenda, and we will need to add purchase power of $796,000, $796,076.67 for total purchases of $2,459,121.50. And then our consent agenda also includes our city council minutes for past work in regular session, our city bills. And then C is 2025 city council meeting calendar. 7D is 2025 board and commission vacancies. And 7E is Parks and Recreation 5-year master plan adoption. 7F, traffic control order 134 and 135. 7G is July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2031 capital improvement program adoption and schedule a public hearing. 8 tonight is presentations and recognitions. We will have oath of office for deputy clerk, followed by 8B, our fiscal year 2024 annual financial audit. For 9, we have informational items. 9A, this is an addition to the printed agenda. We have letter of resignation from Ryan Underhill. No public hearings tonight. No old business tonight. 12, we'll have reports and recommendations. 12A, East Prospect Street vacation request. 12B, personnel policy manual revisions. 12C, water fund and wastewater fund minimum cash reserve policies. 12D, Tree City USA certification. 12E, construction contract for Northeast NIA infrastructure. 12F, 100 Page Street and 500 Industrial Road existing brownfield plan termination and set public hearing. 12G, 100 Page Street and 500 Industrial Brownfield Establishment set public hearing. For 13 appointments and elections, we will have 13A, Planning Commission appointments. And then 14, public comment on non-agenda items, followed by 15, council and manager communications, and then we will adjourn.
The agenda as amended.
I have motion and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion passes. It moves us to public comment on agenda items. Persons addressing the city are required to give their name and address for the minutes. Each person has a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. Anyone wishing to speak on agenda items? Regis?
Regis Klingler, Marshall resident. Couple things, couple from last meeting, actually, to start with. I noticed the packet for the 11/18/24 meeting is not online. It's not there. I hope that gets put on the website shortly. I have a concern about that because of the permit agreement or the maintenance agreement in the city and Maida out at the mega site. We weren't provided the exhibits to that. And Mr. Perry said he would get those in that or in the minutes, and they're not in either one. So I'd like to see those exhibits to that agreement and the packet for that meeting put online. I brought up last meeting about inconsistencies with Marshall Township on the zoning maps. I hope that has been addressed or is being addressed, because that's a very important issue for developers and businesses and people who want to build on zones, and they got to know what the correct zone is, because there's contradictory zoning from the city and township on several parcels. I'm glad to see the yield for pedestrians at the circle is going in. That's a good first step. I would still highly urge that you put in a permanent year-round yield to pedestrians. There's a lot of people there at Christmas time and throughout the winter for the blues festival and everything. So I think year-round would be ideal safety measure there. I'd also like to bring up, when is the next meeting for the master plan? It was in December. Now it's maybe in January. I think that is very important to bring up, dealing with the public on that and having a public hearing. And you're going to set a public hearing for the capital improvement plan. I don't know how you can do that when the 5-year master plan, which is supposed to be in sync with the capital plan, is not even finished and not even set for a public hearing itself. So that, I don't see how you can do that. I think you should wait for the master plan, then put your capital improvement plan out. Let's see. And then the Page Street, changing that zoning, or not getting the zoning, but putting the parking lot in there. I just hope you remember that is part of your Riverwalk neighborhood, and to make sure you use that, make it look pretty to go along with the rest of that district. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak about agenda items tonight? Mr. Adams?
Barry Wayne Adams, 3 blocks that way.
Can I get your address, sir?
What's that?
Can I get your address, sir?
Well, it's 3 blocks that way, 622 West Green.
Thank you.
Now, it's amazing that you're so diligent about wanting to know the specifics of my address, but you could care less about the substance of my comments, as has been reflected in the past, 4 or 5 city council meetings. So, okay, continuing concern about the undue influence in Maida in the direction of what the city's doing. And behind all of that, a concern about how these operations are proceeding through the use of non-disclosure agreements. And this is something that I have just spoken to the Marshall Township Council and the Emmett Township Council about. And although non-disclosure agreements are used in the private sector, they actually do not have any place in public business dealing with issues of public trust. And it's been articulated by numerous courts. It's called the silent fraud doctrine. There are two aspects to fraud. One is the overt expression of a falsehood, and the other is the withholding of the truth, the suppressio veri. And United States versus Pruden, Fifth Circuit says silence can only be equated with fraud where there is a legal or moral duty to speak or an inquiry left unanswered would be intentionally misleading. Now, Michigan Supreme Court has spoken very clearly in Burton versus Tweet, T-U-I-T-E, that there are no secret dealings in public business. And as it says in Tompkins versus Hollister, Michigan Supreme Court, the silent fraud doctrine provides that a fraud arising from the suppression of the truth is as prejudicial as fraud that springs from the assertion of a falsehood. The suppression of a material fact, which a party in good faith is duty-bound to disclose, is equivalent to a false representation and will support an action in fraud. And public officials are duty-bound to provide full disclosure as reflected in the Michigan Compiled Law Statute 750-492. So there is no statute of limitations on fraud. People are realizing how they've been misled, partially led. I'll be back. Time limits on council.
Anyone else on agenda items? Go ahead.
Let's see, Rebecca Sebring, Fredonia Township. So like 12C, you're gonna be doing stuff with my dad's work for over 40 years. Wastewater treatment plant to accommodate the Blue Oval site. Telling you right now, you're gonna install Salt Typhoon. There's a huge FBI warning about Volt Typhoon right now, which you'll learn about when it's public comment. And you will receive a packet at that point, so you'll understand what you've done. Hopefully you reverse it. Also, this area that was industrial, I was just driving through that recently. Like, why didn't you offer that? Why are they cutting off the roads and everything else? It just seems a little military the way they're cutting off the main roads and still have railroad tracks. But that was a perfectly good site over there by the industrial. Did you guys even try to push that? And yes, honestly, the Mieta, every council around here, whether the township or what, is allowed to have somebody on the Mieta board, but they do have to sign an NDA. Don't think we don't talk amongst each other now that there's good guys in different townships, because we do. So some of you know exactly what's going on, and you understand that what you're doing is wrong. And you need to reveal to the people that pay your paycheck what is going on. And you haven't. I will reveal it. This is my job as an American citizen. So you had this industrial park, you're going to close that down, you're not going to use it. You're going to mess with my dad's wastewater treatment plant, and you're going to put in the spyware called Volt Typhoon, which is a part of the overall 3 wars program by the Chinese Communist Party. Just warning you. You have been warned. This is treason.
Thank you. Anybody else to speak on agenda items? Seeing none, we will move on to our consent agenda. Consent agenda for 7A, we've got city council minutes for work session November 18, 2024, regular session November 18, 2024. City bills with the addition of the Michigan South Central Power Agency of $796,076.67 for a total of $2,459,121.50. Our 2025 city council meeting calendar, our 2025 board and commission vacancies, and our Parks and Recreation 5-year master plan adoption, our traffic control order 134 and 135, and the adoption of the July 1st, 2025 to June 30, 2031 capital improvement program, and scheduling a public hearing. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved. Support?
All in favor, say aye. Actually, roll call, please.
Member Karen,
Yes.
Member Gates,
Yes.
Member Traver,
Yes,
Member Wolfersberger.
Yes.
Motion carries, Your Honor.
thank you. Next up is presentations and recognitions. City Clerk.
I am pleased to introduce our new Deputy Clerk, Brandy Carey. She comes to us with several years of experience as an elections clerk and lots of customer service experience as well. And we're really excited for all the things. She's been on board for a couple weeks now, and she's been great so far. So we are very glad to have you on board. So if you are ready. Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution of the state.
and the Constitution of the state,
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of Deputy Clerk for the City of Marshall
of Deputy Clerk for the City of Marshall
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
according
According to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability.
so help me
So help me God. Thank you.
Hold on, put your hands good. Sorry. I said with your red stuff.
Thank you.
Congratulations, thank you. Welcome aboard. Next brings us to our financial audit. I think William is going to start us off here.
Thank you. Dane Porter, who is a senior manager at Manor, which is the audit firm we've used for the past 3 years, is here to give a presentation on the fiscal year 2024 audit. He's also the CPA we've worked most closely with on a day-to-day basis during the audit. So I think we're lucky to have him here because he knows finances as far as any of the auditors, more than anyone we've had come in and present. So, Dane? Thanks.
Thank you. As William said, my name is Dane Porter. I'm a senior manager with Maynard Casterison. I've overseen the audit here for the past 3 or 4 years. Wanted to attend tonight and present the results of the audit to you. I'd like to thank the city staff for all their assistance during the audit. It's gone smooth this year as it has the last few years, so we appreciate that. I want to plan to highlight some of the key areas in the audit. You should have each received tonight before the meeting, a little presentation packet, like a little booklet. That's what I plan to work from for the most part. You should have each received a copy of the financial statements, a copy of the single audit, and then a copy of the letter addressed to city council prior to the meeting. But you really shouldn't need that too much. I'll plan to follow just the presentation packet for the most part. So with that, we'll turn to the second page, I guess, in the presentation packet. This is the independent auditor's report. It's the one piece of the financial statements that we consider to be ours. The financial statements are yours. We've just taken the numbers, we've tested the balances, put it together as the bound financial statements, all that good stuff, but it's still your financial statements. We're just giving our opinion on it. So pages 1 through 3 of the financial statements is the independent auditor's report. I always like to take this opportunity to remind you guys that the intent or the purpose of the audit isn't necessarily designed or intended to detect fraud. But certainly if we're made aware of anything during the audit that we were concerned with, we would share that with you. And we have no concerns of that nature this year. As we'll talk about, the fraud detection, deterrence, and prevention is all management's responsibility. So we'll talk about that in a few pages. So with that, we'll turn to the next page here. The second paragraph on page 1 lays out our opinion. We've issued a unmodified opinion. There's no modifications to it. It's the highest level of assurance that we can give as auditors, basically laying out that the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects. The respective financial position of the governmental activities, business type activities, aggregate discretely presented component units, each of the major funds, and the aggregate remaining fund information. So each of those items is a separate component unit that we've issued a opinion on. Again, we've issued a unmodified opinion or a clean opinion on each of those opinion units. Next page, paragraph 4 of that same page 1 lays out management's responsibilities for the financial statements, which is for the preparation and the fair presentation of the financial statements, which includes the design, the implementation, and the maintenance of your internal controls. So that includes the responsibility for fraud detection, deterrence, and prevention. And the next page, the first paragraph on page 2 lays out our responsibility as the auditors, which is the primary purpose or the objective of the audit is to express our opinions on the financial statements based on our audit. And again, we've issued a unmodified opinion. It's a clean opinion, no modifications to it. So that's what you as the city council wants to see. It's what the state wants to see. Grant funding sources, all that good stuff. So from there, we'll turn to the next page here, talk about the government-wide financial statements a little bit, pages 13 through 15 of the financial statements. They're presented essentially once a year for the audit. It's kind of a long-term focus. It's going to include things like capital assets for the governmental activities, long-term debt. It's going to include your responsibility or your liability for pension, OPEB, things like that. Won't really spend too much time on this, but I do want to point out a couple of key metrics, I guess. Looking at your current ratio, so your current assets versus your current liabilities, how easily you're able to pay your bills when they come due. Governmental activities, you're looking at about 4.4 times more current assets than current liabilities. So you're able to pay your bills relatively easily when they come due. As a benchmark, anything over 1 is good. I think I've heard that 2 is a better position to strive for, but definitely 4.4 is very healthy, very liquid. Unrestricted net position is negative due to the presentation of the long-term debt, your net pension liability, your net OPEB liability. That's been improving the last few years, but it is still negative. Your pension plan is about 57% funded. The OPEB plan is about 42% funded. And I just want to point out that you added $3,665,407 to your net position for the governmental activities. And for the business type activities, you've added $4,358,255. It's relatively the same information as what's presented in the enterprise funds, which we'll talk about separately in a few slides back. So don't really plan to spend too much time on the business type activities with the statement of net position. Next page, looking at the governmental funds, pages 16 and 18, more familiar presentation to you. It's what you probably see at the monthly board meetings. It's more of a short-term focus. It does not include current assets, does not include long-term debt, no pension asset or no pension liabilities, no OPEB liabilities, things like that. So we'll start out with the governmental funds balance sheet on the next page here. Kind of a snapshot of your financial condition and the close of business on June 30, 2024. Looking at your assets, your liabilities, deferred inflows, and your fund balance. We're going to focus mainly on the general fund as the operating fund for the city. The other special revenue funds are all restricted in their purposes. The general fund is a primary operating fund, so that's where we'll spend most of our time. Just with a few highlights here. Total fund balance for the general fund is $3,908,533. There are 5 potential categories of fund balance. The city only reports fund balance in 3 of the 5 categories. So there's non-spendable fund balance, things you've already spent, inventory, prepaids, things like that. There's restricted fund balance, things that are restricted by an outside funding source. Committed fund balance would be things that are restricted by the city council through a resolution. There's assigned fund balance, which would be more of like a management level assignment. Then there's unassigned, which is essentially available for future spending. We like to point out, I guess, or look at the assigned and the unassigned fund balance as your spendable fund balance. You don't report anything currently in the assigned fund balance, but you do report unassigned fund balance, currently about $2.2 million, which is about 25% of your general fund expenditures. So you're able to operate essentially for about 3 months with your existing fund balance, spendable fund balance. The GFOA does like to recommend about at least 2 months of fund balance, so at least 17% of your expenditures in fund balance. So definitely at 25%, you're there a little bit higher. So definitely a healthy fund balance. Next page, we'll look at the statement of revenues, expenditures, changes in fund balance, again, just for the general fund. Total revenues, you're at about $9.1 million, which is about $1 million increase from the last year, about a 13% increase. A couple of highlights here would be about $551,000 increase in intergovernmental sources. That'll be any kind of state and federal grants, state shared revenue, things like that. $350,000 increase in your other revenue, which would be, I believe, primarily that's going to be related to the Blue Oval charges for services and fees there. Expenditures, $8.4 million. It's about a $311,000 increase from last year, about a 4% increase. So pretty consistent. Couple highlights there would be about a $220,000 increase in your legal fees and about $146,000 in public safety related to police payroll and other police expenditures. Net transfers in, transfers out, we about $445,000. And you added to your fund balance about $288,000. Last year you had used about $435,000. So you added in the current year. Next page, little bar chart showing the past 5 years. Again, just the general fund. Looking at the blue bars representing the total revenues, burgundy bars representing your total expenditures, and the yellow bars representing the total fund balance. You've added to your fund balance in 4 of the past 5 years. You had a slight use of fund balance back in last year in 2023, but overall a sound financial condition. Next page we'll look at the composition of the general fund revenues. Biggest revenue source being property taxes at about 50%. Pretty consistent with the year before at about 53%. Intergovernmental revenues, again, that's going to be state shared revenue, any grants, federal and state grants, any local grants. That's about 20% of your general fund revenues this past year, compared to about 15% the year before. And other sources, which again is going to include $350,000 there in the Blue Oval fees and charges. It also includes other charges for services, licenses and permits, fines and forfeits, and interest income for the year. And that is currently at 30%. Next page, looking at the expenditures for the general fund. Biggest expenditure category will be public safety at about 40%. Compares to about 43% last year, so pretty consistent. General government is the next largest category at 26%. Again, that was about 26% last year as well. And public works at about 18%, and that was also 18% last year. So overall, very consistent. Next graph is going to be that percentage of your general fund expenditures and fund balance. Looking at it in terms of the percentages here. So you can see the low in the current year, 25%, in 2024. High of about 34% in 2022. Next couple of pages here, we're gonna look at the proprietary funds, your enterprise funds, I guess. Same information we talked about in the wide financial statements, broken down a little bit more detail, broken out by fund. I'm gonna go through these fairly quickly, but we'll look at each of those major enterprise funds. Starting with the electric fund here on the next page. Again, a 5-year representation here, total revenues, total expenditures, and your total net position. Revenues have steadily increased over the past 4 years. A little bit of a reduction in revenues in 2024. Expenditures have kind of fluctuated. Looking at this 5-year trend, you keep seeing the net position kind of increasing over the last 4 years. You might think that you're is healthy or okay, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in the next slide here about the composition of that net position. So with that, we'll turn the page here to the composition of the net position. The green pieces of the graph here represents the spendable or the unrestricted portion of net position. So in the past, 2020, 2021, 2023, that was a negative number. But in 2023, that reached a positive number, and then it increased a little bit this year in 2024. So definitely a positive trend there. The red piece being restricted for debt service, and then the blue piece being invested in capital assets. So you've already spent it. You can't really spend the capital assets. You just use them in the future. The only way to spend those would be if you liquidated the system. Next page, we'll look at the same thing with the wastewater fund. Overall, the wastewater fund has been in decent shape, upward trend in total net position. You can see that's been increasing over each of the past 5 years. Revenues have exceeded expenditures, so definitely the way a enterprise fund should be operating. Again, the next page here, we'll see the composition of that net position. Again, the green pieces of the bars representing the unrestricted fund net position. The little red pieces there represent the amounts restricted for debt service. And then the blue pieces being the amounts that are invested in capital assets for use in future years. Next page, similar thing here for the water fund. Again, we see a upward trend in the net position over the past, the previous 4 years, I guess, and then a little bit of a decrease in 2024, but nothing big. Next page shows that composition of the net position by category. Again, the green representing the spendable, the unrestricted net position. A little bit of a decrease in 2024 compared to 2023. 2023 increased significantly in that category, but 2024 kind of brought it back down to where it had been previously. Red representing restricted for debt service, and the blue representing the amounts that are already invested in capital assets. And last fund we want to talk about here would be the FiberNet fund. You'll see the net position has been negative in each of the past 5 years, but definitely trending towards the zero or the almost getting into the positive category. So definitely a positive trend there. And next page, we've got the blue bars representing the investment in capital assets, and the red bars being the unrestricted portion of net position. So again, that's the red being the unrestricted piece being negative, but definitely trending in the right direction. Next piece I want to get into would be the single audit, the supplementary information to the financial statements. So because the city did spend more than $750,000 this year in federal awards, you are required to have what's known as a single audit or a uniform guidance audit. Essentially, it's a compliance audit over the grant program requirements. So we're going to look at the CEFA itself, the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. Then we also look at the schedule of findings and question costs, which kind of summarizes the audit. So the next page here is going to be a snapshot of the CEFA for the year, lays out your expenditures of federal awards. You'll see the total there is it's kind of small, kind of hard to read, but might be a little bit bigger in you guys' copies. Total federal awards, about $2.2 million, $2,275,982. That compares to about $1.5 million last year. And for our single audit testing, we tested the Section 8 program, which covered about 27% of those federal awards. And we were required to test at least 20% because you're a low-risk auditee, which we'll talk about on the next page. So next page is the schedule of findings and question cost. Again, kind of summarizes the results of the audit, breaks it out by category, I guess. So financial statements, type of auditor's opinion we've issued was an unmodified opinion. Internal controls over financial reporting. There were no material weaknesses. There were no significant deficiencies. We did note non-compliance material to the financial statements, which just dealt with expenditures over budgetary appropriations. So non-compliance with budgeting. As far as the federal awards go, no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and we issued an unmodified opinion on compliance with the major program, and no other findings to be reported. Next page kind of continues with that schedule of findings and question costs, lays out the program that we tested. Assistance listing number 14.195, I believe it says. Section 8, project-based cluster. Type A programs were anything over $750,000. And again, you qualified as a low-risk auditee. In order to qualify as a low-risk auditee, you'd have to have a single audit in each of the past 2 years without having any material weaknesses or major program compliance items. So because you were a low-risk auditee, we were able to test 20% of your federal awards instead of having to test 40%. That's the only real difference between a low-risk and high-risk auditee. Last thing I want to talk about real quick is upcoming accounting pronouncements. Things coming up on the horizon, I guess. Note 18 of the financial statements, being on page 66. There are 4 new accounting pronouncements coming up over the next 2 years. GASB 101, dealing with compensated absences. Don't really expect to see much of a big difference here in your financial statements, but that is effective for the fiscal year 2025 that we're in now. And then GASB 102, certain risk disclosures, is also effective for fiscal year 2025. If there's any significant risk related to reliance on sole either vendors or sole sources for revenue that might impede the city's ability to provide services or to pay bills, you want to be thinking about those and disclose those next year. If there's any concentrations in risk there. Next page, the last 2 upcoming standards here, GASB 103, financial reporting model improvements. There's gonna be a few updates to the financial reporting, mainly dealing with the MD&A categories, proprietary financial statements, component unit, major component unit presentation, things like that. And then GASB 104, disclosure of certain capital assets, mainly deals with intangible assets, things related to leased assets, SBITAs, subscription-based information technology arrangements, then also any public-private intangible assets. And again, those 2 items are both applicable for fiscal year 2026. That's all I plan to go over, but if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them tonight, or if I can't answer them, I'll get back with you with answers later.
Thank you, Dane. Any questions or comments for Dane?
I'll just comment that it's great to see another clean audit, and appreciate your time and effort on this, and pleased to hear the city staff is doing such a great job.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, sir. Especially love seeing the electric fund being out of that deficit elimination plan and looking positive. I'll take a motion that we approve the receipt of the fiscal year 2024 annual financial audit and place it on file in the office of the city clerk.
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign for no. Motion passes. Next is 9A. We have a letter of resignation from Mr. Underhill. We've all been given a copy of that letter, so I will just look for an approval to accept his resignation.
So moved.
Support.
A motion and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No, same sign. Motion passes. This brings us down to reports and recommendations. First up tonight is 12A East Prospect Street vacation request. Derek, City Manager.
All right, good evening, members of the City Council. So the first item for discussion tonight is 12A. As mentioned, the city's received a request from Oaklawn Hospital to vacate a portion of East Prospect Street between Madison and High Street. The formal request letter is included in your packet, and it's included in the public packet. Again, tonight really is the first time City Council has seen the formal request before you. There are representatives from Oaklawn Hospital here. I believe provide them an opportunity to, make their request, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can.
Would anybody representing Oaklawn Hospital like to say anything on the topic? If you would, you're welcome to come up to the podium.
Lady and gentlemen, I think we spelled out most of our position in the request. The hospital is keeping up with modern conveniences and necessities, and it's just outgrown its structure. We'd be happy to answer any questions. The overlay district provides for the abandonment of streets. It also includes that Oaklawn could move on to High Street to alleviate its present emergency room problem. It would be much more convenient for everyone in town, we believe, if that short stretch of Prospect Street, which Oaklawn owns both sides of, would be closed, and the area north would then be entirely open for development by Oaklawn, which is already part of the overlay district. If we advance on to High Street, it's going to involve removing homes, and that's always been a problem for Oaklawn. At this point, if we move into Prospect Street, that one block, Oaklawn owns both sides, there would be no buildings destroyed, and there'd be no reduction of the tax base. We'll elaborate on that further if there's any questions.
I was just going to say, I know this has come up for several years now with the wanting to expand the emergency room. Does Oaklawn foresee actually building like over into the area where the parking lot is to the north now?
That's the plan.
Okay.
The current emergency room, originally, back when I came to town in the dark ages, it was about 600 square feet. It's now about 8,000, and it needs to be increased if we're going to adequately service the people in the community.
Okay. Well, that does bring up questions with utilities. Obviously, you're not looking to have the utilities.
Pardon?
You're not looking to have the utilities relocated, correct?
I'm sorry.
You're not looking to have the utilities relocated?
There would be a utility corridor is what we planned on, and we'd like
easement?
to talk to the Department of Public Works about that.
Okay. Okay.
We'd like to advance a good portion of Prospect, and then the area north, which is now a parking lot and vacant land, would be room for future expansion. And every time there's a new piece of equipment, we need another 1,000 or 1,200 square feet to put it in.
At this time, there are not any architectural drawings for
There are
conceptual
drawings
drawings.
for going into High Street, but we really don't want to do that.
Okay.
There's sort of been an unofficial agreement that High Street would remain residential. And we've tried to live by that, but at this point, there just isn't any more room. Oak lawn is a misnomer now. There's no lawn and there's no oaks.
The only comment I'll add is, as part of your packet, I did include the hospital campus overlay map. And when you look at it, I mean, really, in order for their emergency room to expand, they really need to go to the north. Otherwise, you'd be looking at, potentially reconfiguring that overlay district. And again, the process in that, I think looking to the north probably makes the most sense, not only for Oak Lawn, but probably, the expansion of the emergency room. And again, our recommendation is, because we need to do a deep dive on this, right? We're not going to make a decision tonight. We need to have the planning commission take a look at that. We need to make sure the departments take a look at that, investigate those utilities, find out what needs to stay, what could be relocated, that kind of thing, and work with Oak Lawn Hospital to find out what those plans look like and see what makes the most sense.
Yeah, to the north makes the most sense for me as well. But I do think there's some further questions that need to be answered, and I'm hoping the planning commission can take a look at that and bring it back to council with the recommendations. If anybody else have feelings or thoughts on that?
I agree. I mean, that's the correct process, so.
I think we should have some formal action on that. That way the planning commission knows they have an official charge and get that taken care of.
I would move then that we refer the East Prospect Street vacation request to the Planning Commission for review and recommendation.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No, same sign.
Wait,
Thank you.
Motion passes. Next up is the 12B Personnel Policy Manual Revisions. City Manager.
All right, thank you. This is a big one for us. So the last major review and revision to the personnel manual was really in 2013, so probably long overdue. There were a few minor revisions in 2017 and 18, but as you're aware, as part of our 2024 action plan, we committed to doing a complete review from front to back. Over the last couple of months, our team's been doing that, and tonight we're ready to present our finished product to you. As you'll see in the report, it outlines a lot of the changes. There's only a few really that are financial related. A lot of them are really to try to bring some parity to maybe some of the union contracts that we've negotiated over the last 3 years. So again, this is bring some parity to the non-union folks, which make up about 28% of our workforce. The rest of the workforce is under a collective bargaining agreement. We're here to answer any questions you may have.
I know there's that Michigan Supreme Court decision that is coming through that's supposed to impact sick time and things like that. Are we exempt from that okay, and so does this take into account those changes?
As best as possible.
Okay.
So obviously, we're in lame duck at the legislature. We're hoping that there'll be a last minute fix. I'm not holding my breath on that. But we did take into account those impacts that would be in place in February, yes.
I mean, after reviewing it and, I mean, it looks like everything's just being brought up to date. And so I feel comfortable with all the proposed changes. And our city attorneys reviewed this as well. And so, between those two items, I'm comfortable with what's proposed.
Appreciate that. I just want to clarify, the labor attorneys from Miller and Johnson, they reviewed that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I didn't want David out there saying what?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It looks good. I'll take a motion to approve the revised personnel policy manual as presented.
So move. Support.
I have motion and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, 12C, Water Fund and Wastewater Fund Minimum Cash Reserve Policies. And if we could have William come up again, please. And Marguerite, William and Marguerite.
All right, thank you, council. So council, previously, we've already established a fund balance policy that helps ensure the city government maintains adequate levels of, I guess, fund balance and to mitigate risk and make sure we have backup revenues for any shortfalls. In addition to that policy, one of our goals for this year was to create for our water and wastewater funds, a minimum cash reserve policy. If you recall, last year, we did the same thing for our electric fund policy. It's not to replace the fund policy that we have already. It's kind of to take it a step further for those specific utility funds and make sure they're a little more, I guess, appropriate for what we're trying to do and to make sure we have adequate backup for, I guess, different elements that aren't covered in that fund balance policy. A minimum cash reserve policy will help us ensure that we can pay not only operating and maintenance expenses in a timely manner, which is what the fund balance policy kind of covers, but we also have in place numbers where we meet our current year debt service requirements, if any, to meet capital improvement requirements. So we're going to be covering, over the 5-year period, we're taking that number and dividing by 5 to have 20% in this fund balance, or excuse me, cash reserve balance. And to account for any variations in seasonal consumption, weather, economic downturns, and things of that manner. Do you want to talk about, I guess, anything? Yeah.
I'll just add that department superintendents and myself participated in the creation of this, reviewed them, and we support the creation of these to help us have those checks and balances on our budget and build those reserves, especially from the capital standpoint, like really being showing that we have, the discipline to build the reserve so we can do those projects that we need.
And before you get into questions, that one other comment, if you look on the, excuse me, bless you. To answer any questions that might have on the last pages of each of those, we put a potential example that it could be. I know if you look at the water, it looks, I don't know what the year is, 9 years or whatever it is to get to that. That is based on our current budget year with the $200,000 reserve. We've had, like Dane said earlier, in 2023, I think we added quite a bit more than that, like $500,000 or $600,000 to reserve. So I think we're, keeping it based on this year, but I don't foresee us taking 9 years to get to that level of funding where we want to be.
Thank you. Any questions for Will and Marguerite?
I do just have one. Part of the purpose of this cash fund is to avoid having to go to bonds for capital outlay. Is that accurate?
A portion of it. There's always the potential that you'll have large projects that you just it's not sustainable to build the cash reserves. Large capital improvement projects. But as far as our annual type projects that you see year in and year out, so water main replacement, sanitary sewer lining, sewer root treatment work, which is capital work because it expands the life of the asset, but not, for example, you'll see in the CIP a new water treatment plant. That's not a dollar value that you build a cash reserve for. So I want to be clear in that it's to it's to get us into more of a cash support position for those annual capital projects. The one-off, every 15, 20-year type project, even 10-year type project would still be bonded.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Your Honor, I'll make a motion to adopt the water fund minimum cash reserve policy and the wastewater fund minimum cash reserve policy to help ensure each department maintains adequate cash to meet its requirements and as safeguard against potential future deficits.
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No, same sign. Motion passes. Moves us to 12D, Tree City USA certification. If Marguerite could come back up.
Good evening. Tonight I bring forward to you a certification to submit an application for a resolution to submit an application for Tree City USA certification. We have in past years been certified as Tree City USA. We do meet the requirements this year. And in addition to the minimum requirements, we've been successful with significant grant dollars that will further improve our ability to maintain this certification. And I'm asking for approval of that resolution tonight. I'm happy to take questions.
I'm just curious obviously the obvious benefits to the residents of Tree City. Are there other benefits as far as access to programs or grants that the certification gets the city?
I don't know of a specific program that you can only apply for if you are Tree City USA. I think it's part of the big picture that if you look at like our urban community forest grant we got from the DNR, that is just another component that you write into those grants that gives you points.
Thank you.
Curious, is the city working with an official arborist, or does the city have an arborist on staff when they're doing these projects?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do not have an arborist on staff. Our $102,000 grant from DNR will require us to contract out with an arborist for the inventory of the trees within the city's right of way. So most of our any certified arborist work is contracted. We do have a few certified arborists who live in town and work elsewhere who have expressed interest in supporting our work in a volunteer aspect on planting activities and just engagement and providing advice. So we would utilize them, but any sort of fully contracted work or, significant work is contracted out.
And is there truth that of all of this work that's going to be done to obtain this Tree City USA status does not include anything that has been done at Blue Oval? Or is that part of becoming Tree City USA, is like the planting that's already been done out there is not, that's completely separate. So this is all in the other city limits.
Yep, this is all part of work that we have done within the city boundary previous to Blue Oval. So that's not city property, those plantings, that's not city right of way. And so that would not account towards our Tree City USA certification. What we have to do to receive certification, as an overview, we have to celebrate Arbor Day. And we have to have a proclamation from council, which you did in April for Arbor Day. And we have to spend $2 per capita on tree maintenance. We do that with our annual tree maintenance with our DPW staff.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I'll move we approve resolution 2024-36, a resolution to apply for a Tree City USA certification. Authorize the city manager and city clerk to sign the necessary documents.
I have motion and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Brings us to 12E, construction contract for the Northeast NIA infrastructure. You're up again.
Yeah, thank you. Tonight, I'm asking for approval of two contracts to support infrastructure being built in our Northeast Neighborhood Improvement Authority, NENIA is the acronym in your document. We received 4 bids on October 31st, 2024. And for work within the NIA, and it was separated into 2 components. So Valley View 1 is a development being completed by Allen Edwin Homes. And it is the first phase of the development along Valley View, what will be Valley View Court. There's a graphic in your report on the second page if you would like to see where that's located. It's off of Allen Road, south of O'Keefe Road. And that includes infrastructure to support that development. So water, sewer, stormwater, street work, curb and gutter, electric and fiber. And then the sidewalk improvements component of that project is shown in orange on the graphic. So that is neighborhood sidewalks outside of the development area for existing properties that do not have sidewalk. And we are doing this as part of this project to help provide connectivity along Forest Street to the to the west. And the development will have sidewalk installed at the responsibility of the developer. So that's why there's not a specific orange line shown within Valley View Court. That is the responsibility of the developer, whereas new sidewalk on existing developed properties is something that the city will fund. We are recommending two contracts because we can save approximately $41,000 by going with 2 different contractors. And we also have in this request a construction engineering approval with our design engineer, VK Civil. They won the bid on the engineering design work in 2023 and early 24 maybe. And so they've provided a quote to do the construction engineering as the contractor does their work.
Can I ask when we think is the time frame for this work to be completed?
Great question. We wrote into the construction documents a time frame of March 15th through November 15th. The developer is anxious to start, but they don't feel the need to start like in June. So that is the time frame we know right now until we get the schedule from the contractor. And we did that to provide flexibility to them in with the hopes of getting more competitive pricing.
Can I ask also, do we have any idea how many homes Allen Edwin wants to build in that stretch?
I do. I don't remember.
Oh, that's okay.
I think that phase 1 and phase 2 is 30-ish
Okay.
homes.
It's 17 in the first phase.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
They're numbered.
Oh, that makes
Put
sense.
it in there. Oh, yeah, I did put it.
Sorry, I missed it.
No, that's okay. So did I.
Are all of the new sidewalk improvements within the boundaries of that Northeast NIA?
That's correct. That's why it starts at that's why it stops at East Drive.
Hmm.
That's the boundary.
Okay.
I would eventually love to get further west.
It's a start. I love it.
Yeah, I would just comment that it's been a goal of the council for a while to get some more much needed housing in Marshall. And I think it's wonderful to see that that's happening and that the NIA has been an effective mechanism to help make that happen. And I really love the fact that we're getting more sidewalks out of it. So great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion. We approve the construction contract with Parish Excavating for Valley View 1 in the amount of $973,178 with a contingency of $96,822 for a total funded amount of $1,070,000. Approve a construction contract with Hoffman Brothers for sidewalk improvements in the amount of $133,864.19 with a contingency of $13,135.81 for a total funded amount of $147,000, and approve a construction engineering contract with VK Civil for Valley View 1 and sidewalk improvements in the amount of $109,350 with a contingency of $10,650 for a total funded amount of $120,000, and authorize the city manager and city clerk to sign the necessary documents.
So moved.
Support.
I have motion and support. If we could get a roll call vote, please.
Member Gates,
Yes.
Member Traver,
Yes.
Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Member Karen. Motion carries, Your Honor.
Thank you. That brings us to 12F, 100 Page Street and 500 Industrial Road, existing brownfield plan termination and set public hearing. Marcia to present.
Good evening. What you have in front of you regarding the 100 Page Street and 500 Industrial Road existing brownfield plan termination. That plan was set up in 2016 for that site. And it was supposed to be a Dark Horse Brewing Company parking lot. That plan never happened. The contaminants are still there. The site has been purchased by a new developer, and they are asking to have that plan terminated so that they can then proceed with other work associated with that site. And so at this time, we are asking to have that, well, we're introducing this so you can consider that. And a public hearing is required prior to that termination. And we're proposing that that is held at the January 21st City Council meeting. Do you have any questions?
Questions, comments?
I'll move to introduce resolution 2025-01, a resolution to terminate the brownfield plan for Dark Horse Brewing Company redevelopment. Set a public hearing for the January 21st, 2025 City Council meeting at 7 p.m.
I will support.
Motion and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No, same sign. Motion passes. So next up is 12G, 100 Page Street, 500 Industrial Brownfield Establishment, set a public hearing. Marcia, once again.
Hello again. We are talking about the same site that we just talked about terminating the old brownfield plan. So this is a proposal. The current owners of the property are seeking to establish a new brownfield plan. And that plan is to help them with a project that will have, they're doing some personal storage units on the site. This has been reviewed by the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority at their November 21st meeting. The BRA recommended that the existing plan be terminated and the new one be established. The proposed redevelopment includes, like I said, it's 4 multi-unit storage buildings within the site. The total investment is estimated at $1.27 million. And if all approvals are received, construction is expected to commence in 2025 and be completed in 2026. We do have the developer here tonight if you have any additional questions about the project. And there's information in the packet that includes anticipated expenses and reimbursements, along with some graphics of the proposed project. It's kind of early in the packet. I have it printed out and I would say it's about a fifth of the way in. There are some graphics in there.
I believe this already went through planning commission review as well, correct?
This went through the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority.
Right, but this, I believe the site plan already went through planning commission as well.
Yes, I'm sorry. Conceptual, yeah.
I only bring that up because I do recall that they went to extensive efforts to mitigate stormwater and work around some of the limitations of the site. I think dealing with the contamination on it just probably takes costs through the roof, but the brownfield remediation plans are definitely generous. Probably worthy, so. If there's no other questions, I'll make a motion to introduce resolution 2025-02, resolution supporting the adoption of a brownfield plan of Building Better Spaces LLC redevelopment and set a public hearing for the January 21st, 2025 City Council meeting at 7 p.m.
I'll support.
I hear a motion and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No, same sign. Motion passes. It takes us down to 13 appointments and elections. And for the planning commission appointments, city manager.
Thank you. My final item for you tonight is to request the reappointment of two existing planning commission members, Tim Banfield and Timothy Fitzgerald. They're current members and they would like to be reappointed and their term expires here this year.
I'll approve the reappointment of Tim Banfield and Tim Fitzgerald to the Planning Commission for a term ending on December 31st, 2027.
Support.
I hear a motion and a support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you, Tim and Timothy, for continuing to serve on the planning commission. Takes us down to 14, public comment on non-agenda items. Persons addressing the council are required to give their name and address for the record. Members are given 2 minutes to speak on non-agenda items. If anybody wishing to speak tonight. Regis.
Regis Klingler, 348 Butler Court, Marshall. Couple things I've brought up before, and I think it's important to keep bringing up is when is the next public meeting on the master plan? That is very important for the direction of the city. It's long overdue. I mean, it's supposed to be done in 2020. It's now almost 2025. So that should be a very high priority for the city. And I don't think you can really do your capital improvement plan without first getting a good idea of what the capital plan is going to, the master plan is going to be. Also, I brought up last time, I really urged the city to fund an environmental planner or whatever kind of position that is. There are numerous, the Page Street, they've got environmental contamination there. We've got a lot of questions from the Blue Oval plant. It's an increasing need for that. People in Marshall have expressed views for clean water, clean land, stormwater maintenance. So I think that is long overdue. You're obviously bringing in more revenue. The city's in a better financial situation. I think that would be a very wise investment is hiring a person to coordinate that. And in the past, that person has coordinated with the Marshall Area Conservation Committee also. And they desperately need a common person to tie all the groups together. I was wondering if the MEDA is paying property taxes on the land they own in Marshall Township. It's my understanding they are not, and that it takes a resolution of this council to do that. I'm asking, has that been passed or not? Also for the Oak Lawn Hospital, I would recommend considering putting an elevated walkway over the street there. Then you wouldn't have to close the street. You would just have to have elevated walkway and have the building just in the parking lot there. Something to consider.
Anyone else like to speak on non-agenda items?
Barry Wayne Adams again, 622 West Green Street. And the minutes will reflect nothing more than that information. We're going through the same routine again. We went through this before. Somebody complains about the protesters down at the fountain. Of course, we never find out who it is, although in some cases we did find out who it is. But again, anonymous informant says that we're creating a disturbance with our signs. And the first time they tried to, the officer that came down tried to invoke Marshall Ordinance 116.01 dealing with unlawful posting of advertising. Now we have to remember that advertising is a term that deals with signage and messaging that is in the realm of commerce. But your city ordinance is based on a state statute, and it's MCL 252-318, which is the Highway Advertising Act of 1972, and to provide for the licensing, regulation, control, and prohibition of outdoor advertising adjacent to certain roads and highways. Somebody down at the police station does not understand the strict line between political speech and commercial speech. Commercial speech can be regulated according to the Commerce Clause. Political speech cannot be regulated pursuant to the First Amendment and Article 1, Section 5. How many times have I read this? But you're trying to be unconstitutional.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Rebecca Sebring, Fredonia Township. This is a real FBI warning. The FBI warns there has been the largest breach and security breach in U.S. history, possibly the world. The FBI and Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency released a joint statement. Officials acknowledge access to commercial telecommunications infrastructure has been breached. The breach is a larger Chinese CCP effort known as Salt Typhoon. Also, this is part of the CCP Chinese overall 3 warfare program. Also, Volt Typhoon, which I do believe you've installed in Marshall, is associated with the CCP hackers group. They have successfully infiltrated thousands of U.S. systems, including crucial infrastructure such as water control systems, wastewater treatment plant, air traffic control systems. You can find this information on YouTube at Crossroads with Joshua Phillips. FBI warns stop text messaging and CCP breaches networks. This is Volt Typhoon is what I do believe they have installed in the software. I went to the county meetings. They used Mieta to pick out the new software. This is definitely not good. It's just my hypothesis. These are all connected to the Chinese initiative handcuffs, the overall three-war program, and also the CCP's Ministry of Public Security.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak on non-agenda items tonight? Seeing none, moves us on to manager and council communications, Mr. Gates.
I know he's not here, but I would just acknowledge Ryan Underhill's service. It's been a pleasure serving with him. I know that he was moving out of the ward, so therefore stepped aside, but just appreciate all that he's done for the city.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Wolfersberger?
I will echo Member Gates' sentiments towards Mr. Underhill. He has been a great asset to the council. But I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact that tonight is Joe Caron's last meeting. And Mr. Caron has dedicated about a decade now to serving the city in various roles, both mayor and council member, as well as other boards and committees throughout the community. Joe, my personal thanks, and I hope the thanks of the city to all that you've done. You definitely earned a break, but I hope we see you lots of places soon. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you, Joe.
City manager?
My last comment will be for our Finance Director, William Dopp, and the finance team. Again, we had another great presentation on our audit. And as I say every time when we go through the action plan, it really starts with the finances, right? I mean, we can't really do anything else unless the books are in sound order. So I want to appreciate what William does and his team to keep that $44 million budget where it should be. So I appreciate that.
City clerk?
Nothing for me today.
Thank you. Yes, echo what you say about Mr. Underhill, and then best wishes to Teresa Cheney Huggett, who is recovering from surgery. And then I still don't want to accept that you're leaving us, Joe, but we will miss you, and we appreciate all that you've done for the city, and I know where to find you. And that is it for this evening. We are adjourned.